Now, Israel's domestic security service agency Shin Bet has acknowledged its failure in preventing the October 7th attacks that killed 1,250 people, 1,250 people. Now, according to the findings of an internal probe, if the agency had acted differently in the years leading up to the Hamas attack and on the night of the attack itself, the worst massacre in Israeli history could have been prevented. For more on this story, we can go across to correspondent Noga Tarnopolsky standing by in Jerusalem. Noga, good afternoon to you. What was the biggest bombshell revelation for you?
Good afternoon, Delano. Well, Israelis have been exposed in the last few days to a series of these reports. They're internal reports from the Israeli military and now, as you said, from the security agency known as the Shin Bet. And each one is doing a sort of in-house check. So the Shin Bet's outline of its own failures is really quite a kick to the stomach of most Israelis. It shows an astonishing failure from intelligence gathering to operational failures on the day itself. However, the biggest bombshell in this report, I think, without question, is that the Shin Bet says now publicly that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's doctrine, the Netanyahu doctrine of transferring millions and millions of dollars to Hamas, Qatari funds authorized and requested by Israel, the report says, were key in allowing Hamas to prepare, as you said, the invasion and the massacre of Israel. This is an extremely uncomfortable moment for Prime Minister Netanyahu, who apparently knew what was coming. He has been trying to fire the director of the Shin Bet for weeks, openly, overtly. His ministers are calling for it day by day, to such an extent that the Attorney General was forced to remind Netanyahu just 2 days ago that he cannot fire the head of the Shin Bet without her authorization, that it would be illegal. So we find ourselves not only with difficult news for Israelis to digest, but also with a public standoff between the office of the Prime Minister and the top domestic security officials.
Noga, with revelations like these that keep coming out following these internal probe, one has to ask, where does the buck stop? Because typically the buck would stop at the top.
That's right. That is absolutely right. That's the Truman-esque tradition. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu does not believe that the buck stops with him. He believes that the buck stops with the country's military and security chiefs. He has said it from the start. He said it in a tweet that was considered so aberrant a month into the war that he was forced to delete it, and he blamed a staffer for it, in which he said, had I been warned, I would have acted differently. They didn't warn me, it's on them, at the height of the war. But I want to discuss another revelation having to do with whether or not he was warned. We already know from the previous IDF reports that the chief of intelligence sent to Netanyahu at least 4 warnings in writing that Israel's enemies saw an opportunity to attack the country because, among other things, because of Netanyahu's push to take over the democratic institutions of the state. Now we have a new revelation, which is that in May 2023, so 6 months before the attack, the head of the Shin Bet, who Netanyahu is now trying to fire, Ronen Bar, warned Netanyahu that war against Hamas was inevitable, and he proposed assassinating the leadership of the Hamas. Netanyahu's response was that Hamas is deterred.
Noga, thank you very much.